Right. So can we get all the speakers to introduce themselves, state your current role, where you're at in your program or where you're located, and what medical school you went to, and anything that made your path to becoming a doctor different. And I'll type what I want you to say so that you don't forget.
Okay, I'll go first. Good evening, everyone. My name is Corey Boggs. I am originally from Columbia, Maryland. I went to Ross University School of Medicine. At the time that I went, it was in Dominica. It's currently in Barbados. So I am an international medical graduate, and I'm currently an intern at Ross University School of Medicine. Morehouse Family Medicine. Sorry.
Sorry, I was like muted for a second there. Hi, I'm Priscilla. I am a PGY1 at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences at Jonesboro, Arkansas, the state that's not doing so well right now. Obviously I'm in family medicine. I went also to Ross University School of Medicine. So as far as pathways concerned, I went to nursing school, actually. That was the first degree I had. I didn't take the board licensing exam because I wanted to pursue medicine, but I went to nursing school. I also got a master's in epidemiology, cardiovascular epidemiology at Johns Hopkins. Worked on a lot of postgraduate work in epidemiology for Hopkins, and then worked as a consultant for pharmaceutical industries for a couple of years before going to med school. And Ramla, I think she said she's like in between places. She's the other speaker, and she said she'll be settled in 5 to 10 minutes, I think.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to her.
Minutes because I did not follow instructions. So the thing that made me unique, which I think is kind of unique to a lot of IMGs, I think it's honestly to our benefit, we have a lot of experience, real world experience before we enter into medical school. So I actually worked for my local county health department for a year in their women, infants, and children's department. So I was their lab tech as well as their nutritional educator. I did 2 AmeriCorps terms. That's like a federal volunteer program. I was working with the FQHC, where I basically helped them bring Title X family planning and sliding scale for their medical services to their clinic. So that was 2 years. I went to grad school at Wake Forest, go Deeks, if there's anybody here from North Carolina. Got a master's in biomedical science. And then similar to Priscilla, I also worked for a pharmaceutical company. They were all actually established in India. They were building generics here in the States. And so I was responsible for helping with basically starting up their production and compliance. So that was kind of my journey before I hopped on a plane and went to an island far away.
And then I'll go ahead and introduce myself, but I'm just the moderator. So I'm a 4th year at American University of Antigua. I'm from Houston, Texas. So I am a US IMG, and well, I'm not a doctor yet, so I won't answer the last question. Oh, and Dr. Ramla is sorry, I'm laughing. Dr. Ramla is ready to introduce herself.
Hi, can you hear me? All right, great. So yeah, my name is Ramla Castosi. I just completed residency at the University of Minnesota Family Medicine Program, St. John's. So I'm kind of in vacation mode until I begin that attending life. I did my medical school actually in Uganda, East Africa. I'm Ugandan and Canadian, did my undergrad in Canada, but went to Uganda for medical school. And then took the scenic route because I did a master's in public health at Emory University before starting residency. So that's me.
Thank you guys for introducing yourself. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get some questions out the way. And if anybody has questions, feel free to write them in the chat and I'll try to keep up with all of them. So first question I have for you guys is, why did you guys choose to go to a Caribbean school or any school outside of the United States?
I can't speak for everyone, but I feel like I kind of can. So I will start by saying this. For most of us, especially coming from stateside, it's a very circuitous route. There's usually a lot of hoops that you have to jump through. It's not impossible. Clearly, we're here. We matched successfully. But for me, it was just a time thing. So I mentioned that I got my master's from Wake Forest University, and I actually ended up being waitlisted for admission to medical school. And I was kind of in a situation where it was like, oh, do I want to wait a whole nother year, possibly not get in, and then time has gone by, or do I want to go ahead and pursue this? And I had actually known about Ross in particular since I graduated college. I am old, y'all. I'm way older than I look. I graduated from college in 2010. So I had known about them for a while. So fast forward to 2015, I was in grad school, was waitlisted, didn't really know, what was going to happen as far as Wake Forest was concerned. And I kept getting information about Ross, and they were literally like, just send over the same application that the AAMC application that you submitted, for your stateside schools, we'll review it. And I got in, so I was just like, for me, the time was going to pass regardless. So why not utilize that time pursuing it versus sitting out another year and then having to go through the application process again. But I do want to emphasize before I hand over the mic, because I know there's this stigma like, oh, you're an IMG, you couldn't cut it. Like, we are beasts, as you all know, really. We go super hard. That's academically, because our academic rigor is a lot more. There's a lot more testing that we have to go through before we can even get to board exams. We are tested a lot. It's changed for Ross, but originally for Ross, there was a whole separate exam that you had to pass for the school before they would even let you sit for board exams. So it's completely different. And then I think because we understand that there's this stigma with being an IMG, then when we get on the wards, we're going 10 times harder. You know what I mean? Because we understand that there may be this misconception that oh, we're not as intelligent or whatever. So we definitely show up and show out. So I just want to say that, but I might be a little biased.
I'll say this. When I got into Ross, it was actually the second time I had applied to med school. So I'm one of those people who struggle with standardized exams. I hate standardized exams. But as you can see, they are a part of our life for med school, for the entire process. But the first time I applied to Ross, same time I applied to my master's, and I didn't get into med school because my MCATs weren't competitive enough. But I did get into my master's. So I ended up working on that. And I mean, I actually am happy that worked out that way, because I picked up something that it explained a lot about the way I thought epidemiology. It came so naturally to me. So that actually worked out. And then when I decided to come back to med school, time was running out. It was kind of a time thing. My courses, I'd taken all those biochemistry courses, and they were about to be expired. And I was like, it's either now or never. And Corey, I had also heard about Ross when I was an undergrad as well. And so I was like, you know what, let me try for them. And, they gave me a shot. They didn't focus so much on the number, you know what I mean, on the MCAT score. They looked at me from a more holistic perspective, I feel like. And I also ended up going to, some of you are familiar with the MERT program. Ross put me through the MERT program because it had been a while since I had been in school when I applied to them. And so it actually helped me to kind of transition back in. So that is me.
All right. So I think for me, I have sort of a different story. For me, my experience comes from this perspective of being a Canadian trying to kind of enter the system. For me, I decided to go to Makerere University, which is one of the leading universities in Uganda, East Africa, just because one, also like you guys in the States, in Canada, it's very hard to get to medical schools. We have fewer medical schools, actually, by the way. I mean, such a large country, but I think it's just ridiculous that the proportion of the population does not match really the med schools there. And for instance, okay, we have provinces, if you don't know, unlike states. And so like in Ontario, for instance, I think there's maybe like 5 or 6 medical schools up to now for that one province. And they only take a class of like 100. And it's just so tight to get in. And plus very expensive. And so, and I remember my father was like, look, at the end of the day, you're going to become a doctor. You're just going to take a very long road. So I decided to go back home to Uganda, and I never regretted that decision. I love it. You know, like Corey said, that I feel like IMGs, we get that perspective, you get that world view, that rooftop view of health, because you get that perspective of everything that you see in healthcare. And I was exposed to a lot of like hands-on, and you're forced to look at your clinical reasoning more so, just because we're not privy to all these diagnostics, you know, they have here in the States. So that was sort of kind of my reason of just going back home, was one, because I wanted to challenge myself, and two, you know, I knew I wanted to become a doctor, and I just didn't want to wait to be on the wait list, because I was waitlisted every time when I applied, and it was just years were going, and I'm like, this is just not working out. And so I did that. Of course, the other hump I had to go through was like now coming back to the States here, like, you know, going through the exams. And then I have another layer of just, you know, citizenship. So, you know, we have a whole visa layer. So that's can be quite challenging as well. Me being a very visible minority, a Black and a Muslim. So you can imagine the layers of like, oh my goodness, can this person enter our country kind of thing. But somehow I made it. I mean, I pushed through. And I knew that for me personally, to just solidify or just strengthen my application, I decided to do a master's and I felt I needed to do that master's in the States because one, I felt that could be a gateway to understand the health system structure, and then also start networking and meet people. Honestly, I love my MPH, and I'm glad I got it. And the benefit was that it was covered, which was great. I was granted a scholarship and a fellowship with the CDC, so that was a bonus. So I didn't have to spend money with it. So if any of you guys are ever interested, CDC along with Emory University has what they call the Complex Humanitarian Emergency Fellowship, which I did. You get to do your MPH in 1 year, which I did, which was crazy, but somehow I did it. So I did a master's, which is usually in 2 years, but in 1 year. And then I applied for the CDC fellowship, and they covered everything. I got a stipend, they covered food, housing, everything. So which is great. And that was and I used that year very intently because, you know, Emory University is in Atlanta. So I really hit the ground running, trying to meet many physicians. So I can just, while I'm there, I might as well just try to shadow network. And that really kind of helped me and allowed me to speak to a lot of people to see what their path was into residency. So those are kind of my whys as to, you know, I'm glad I took that route. Yes, it took forever, but in the end, it played out because by the time I hit interviews, people were like, oh my God, you did this in 3 different countries. Wow. So sometimes it helps to have that global health perspective, especially if you're really interested in family medicine. Yeah.
I also want to say that, well, you guys are already, you're already in medical school. So, but I just want to reiterate, don't let the imposter syndrome of being an IMG, because there's a lot of imposter syndrome. So I'm feeling it right now as an intern. Like, what? I don't know anything, honestly. But don't let the fact that you did not graduate in the States make you feel like you're less than or you don't have the same knowledge, because there are people who literally had the same stats that I did as far as MCAT, and I took the MCAT when it was 2 digits. As far as science GPA, that were able to get into US schools. And so I don't know if it was a misalignment of timing, or I don't know if it was, you know, I just didn't apply to whatever particular school that would have accepted me in that particular year. There are a lot of things that go into admissions, right? It's not just who you are in a vacuum. So don't make it feel like just because you weren't accepted in a stateside school and you did decide to go to a Caribbean school or a school that's outside the states, period, that you're less than, because that's not true. I know people with the same exact stats as me, literally, who, you know, got into stateside schools, they struggled, or they finished at the same time I did and they started before me. So I just want to put that out there. Don't go into, your residency application season feeling like, oh my God, I'm an IMG. That's already a strike against me, because it's not. You're knowledgeable and you're capable.
I totally agree with everything Corey just said. And I just want to add that the way I look at it, anybody who doesn't want you is missing out, because you are something that I don't, they're missing out. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yes, y'all. Okay, so the next question we have is, what did you do to stand out as an IMG applicant in preparation for match, or just any tips and tricks that made y'all stand out?
So I'll talk first. So let me start off by saying family medicine gets this rep for being people's backup, okay? And program directors, a lot of times they can sniff that out and they don't like it. Family medicine programs do not like it when when they can tell that an applicant is coming as, oh, family medicine is what I'm going to try. I'm going to put it on there in case I don't get my IM residency, or in case I don't get, I know some of you genuinely are not sure whether it's IM or family medicine, which is totally fine. But like, some people put it in there as their backup and they can sniff that out. So try to like really push that family medicine agenda. I think if you think about what Corey says, and you think about the fact that, we're not imposters, that we have a legitimate reason to be here, that you have something to offer, then that whole IMG thing shouldn't even make a difference. You should just be trying to push because you want family medicine and you want it and you want to go hard for it. And so some of the things that, and I'm sure Corey will talk about it as well, that we both got involved in family medicine. And I think when you get involved, especially at the national level, and people see you, they know, okay, this person is legit, they're about it. They are about this family medicine thing. And so like for me, I got involved by, I was serving on the editorial board for the American Family Physician Journal. I've been doing that for the past year. Technically, I am the student rep, even though I am now a physician, but I started off the position as the student rep, and the position doesn't end until December. And so I've got to do things like I've written a practice guideline. That thing's coming out, I don't know, sometime this year. I've submitted an entry to the Diary of the Family Physician, so what it looks like in the day of a family physician. I'm working on their diversity, equity, and inclusion task force, so that they can, look at diversity and inclusion from the perspective of a journal. And I hope to also help them with their summit, that we're involved in the journal writing process. So I got in there and said, look, guys, I'm about this family medicine life, okay? And I'm not ashamed to say that I'm about this family. So putting yourself out there, I think, is one great way to just make you stand out in general, regardless of whether or not you're an IMG.
And I also want to add on to that. Don't count yourself out just because you're IMG, because similar to Priscilla. So first of all, we go back to the island, Priscilla and I, like, we were involved in everything. I'm talking about White Coats for Black Lives, Public Health Club, like, we are true to this. But as we left the island after the hurricane, we still remain committed to being involved, and it was genuinely out of a passion. And it had to be out of a passion because there was a lot going on after the hurricane, like a lot. So I was also involved, or I still am involved with AAFP on a national level. The Student National Medical Association liaison to the AAFP. So Student National Medical Association is basically the org for Black and Brown medical students, pre-meds who are interested in medicine. And it's not solely focused on family medicine, but we just provide opportunities for students to engage in whatever, whether it be international affairs, academic affairs, I was really big on health policy because I feel like that's really instrumental to the healthcare that you provide. So if you don't have the policy in place, you can't provide the best healthcare for people. So that's really where I was engaged. And so basically I'm just a liaison between the two. And similar to like Priscilla said, my role does not, even though I'm a physician, my role does not end until December. So I'm still, over that. But I think genuinely getting involved. I'm originally from Maryland, as I stated. And so there had never been an IMG that was their student board member for the Maryland Academy of Family Physicians. But I looked on the website and it didn't say you couldn't be. So I applied and I got it. Traditionally, it had been like University of Maryland students for years. I want to say like at least a decade. But I applied and I got it. So I took it and ran with it. And it really gave me not only experience, but a great perspective to see just what leadership is doing in family medicine and what they're looking for the future. And so not only did they give me guidance, but they also value my perspective as a student at that time. So I definitely echo what Priscilla said as far as getting involved. And it's whatever you're passionate about. It doesn't have to be with the journals like Priscilla said, or like with health policy and equity, like I said. It's whatever you're passionate about. Because I think within AAFP, I mean, you can do, there's like the Society for Teaching Family Medicine. So if you're passionate about academia, you can do that. If you're passionate about Congress, AAFP has its own Congress, and it's at every level, attending level as well as resident level, you can do that. And it's just a matter of putting forth the effort to apply. You really can do it. So those are the things that I got involved in, and then just really, really showing up and showing interest. So I was fortunate. I did all my rotations in Maryland. And I had when I did my family medicine rotation, third year, I had two family medicine physicians as my attending. He was really old school. I'm talking about my hand was dead every day because the man still did paper charts, but he was valuable. He taught me a lot about just the core of family medicine and what it's about. And then I had someone else who was younger. She saw a younger population and she was more entrepreneurial. So I got her perspective as well. And they saw that I was invested. Like I was, coming early, staying late, like those things that are cliche, but they really do make a difference because they went hard for me throughout the entire residency interview process. So, Ramla.
Yeah, so I mean, similar kind of themes is just I had to be a little bit more strategic just because for me, on my perspective, I didn't have it was not easy to get rotations. So what I had to do was be a little bit creative. I was lucky that by the time I came to the States, so while I was doing my MPH, I didn't tell you guys this. So my husband was doing internal medicine residency. We, very cliche, we got married we were med students in Uganda, and that's where we met. But we knew, like, from a long time ago, like, we're like, we're going to the US, somehow we'll make it and we'll do residency. And we're like, whoever enters first will help the other. So it's almost like that's how I entered. Because my husband was lucky. I mean, it took, I admit both of us, it took us a couple tries to also get into the match, but somehow he made it, then eventually I made it. And so I knew with him getting in, I said, introduce me to everyone you know, because I just need to know everyone, your physicians, your faculty, even we were in a very small town, Youngstown. It's in Ohio. And so, I met some of the family medicine residents. I met some of the family medicine docs. I've met even hometown family medicine, people who have private practices. And I just said, look, I'm committed. This is what I need to do. And I was straight up honest. I'm like, look, I need a letter from you guys, but I need to show that I need experience because this is how this country operates. They will not look at all the work that I did in Uganda or anything like that. Because at the end of the day, some programs are like that. They're a little nervous about, internationals coming in. So they want to see that you have some US based experience, which I totally get and I understand. And I'm glad I got it because, the health system structure is so different, especially me as a Canadian, seeing the American system so different in all realms because there's that legacy of slavery and the impact of health inequities. And, we gotta really acknowledge that layer and how it plays into patient care. And that's also a different perspective also from Uganda, where Uganda has a legacy of colonialism and the impact of healthcare on that is also very different. So Definitely. I know some people don't like to hear it, but you do need that American experience. And so I put in my head, I got to do that. So I was fortunate. I used my husband to network and get other to find different people. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I did that MPH at Emory, which was also another boost because that was now another state. And then I tried to like find also family medicine people. Now, for me being a former refugee, like I told you, I was born in Uganda, but my family and we immigrated to Canada. And so refugee health has always been something very passionate of mine. And that's what helped me also do my master's in public health. I looked into complex humanitarian emergencies, what happens to refugees, especially sexual reproductive health. And I was like, there's such a parallel with that with family medicine. And that's what sort of has been my guiding push as I went through this application process and into even residency. And so that's how I got the various opportunities. So while I was in Atlanta, there was like free clinics. Like I don't know if you know Clarkston. You probably know Corey Clarkston. Yeah, there's a community center there. I know that really helps a refugee. So I kind of volunteered there. I met a lot of people there. And so through that all experience, that really kind of helped me. Another aspect which I think allowed me to stand out, especially when I came to the residency interviews, was that they knew I was very interested in research. And what I've noticed, yes, primary healthcare and family medicine, compared to other disciplines, we don't write as much, which is okay. We kind of do, but not as much. And so they saw the research and the scholarship that I managed to get while I was at Emory and also while in Uganda. So, and then another experience I had was when I went to Cleveland and I did some cancer research. So I was fortunate to have at least like 3 publications before I applied to residency. So I think that's kind of what helped me. And they said, wow, this person is committed to family medicine and also scholarship within the discipline, which kind of helped me, I think. So yeah.
Just want to add one last thing. Something Rama was talking, well, her whole experience actually has made me think about something, because she's like, based on everything she said, you could tell she busted her behind with that networking angle. And so a lot, I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity to go to a national conference, AFP, but it is the perfect time for you to, if you're going into match, it's probably too late now, but for those of you who still have time to go to the next year's before you apply, it's a perfect place for you to network. You go to different talks, get involved in discussions, speak up, say your name every time you speak up. So your name is, hopefully next year it'll be in person, because it's even better when it's in person and you get to make those contacts. But I've made some really great contacts from attending the conference and going to the various workshops and talking with people. And actually, Ramla and I chased each other around Twitter last year at the conference. But yeah, networking is so powerful.
Okay. Okay. The next question is kind of like a follow-up question, was just that how can we even get, so the question is, how do we even get our application to be seen? A lot of the criteria truly kick out our applications. For this specific person, they're saying that it's been 5 years since she graduated and barely having any USCE. So I guess in that situation, or anybody similarly, how can they get their application to be more seen, especially when there's what are those things called? Like I can't think of
Filters.
Yes, filters. Yeah.
I think the big things for us, and I had one of the, I guess, options that you have as an IMG is that depending on when you finish school. So for me, for example, I technically finished school in January of this year. So I had, several months of downtime, and technically I could have taken step 3. As Priscilla will tell you, our journey was very tumultuous. It was very exhausting. So when I finally finished, I was like, I need a break. But some people do utilize that time to go ahead and get step 3 over with. I think that's always an advantage, because one of the things programs are going to be concerned about across the board is, can you pass step 3 the first time? Any program, that's going to be one of their biggest concerns. So if you're someone who's had issues with step 1 or step 2. I think taking step 3 if you can, and I know there's obviously a financial obligation, a very large financial obligation, both in registering for the exam and preparing for the exam. I think that's always an advantage. And then one of the things in retrospect that I think that I did, which is the reason that I could not, or I did not get into a US school, which honestly was a blessing in disguise, is that I limited myself regionally. So I don't know who the person is who's asking this question, but if you can, I would say, you know, have the sky be the limit within reason. If you can, don't limit yourself to a region, but I also put an asterisk by that with doing your research, because if it's a program that is like all white males for the last 5 years, don't apply there, because that you can see the trend. Like clearly they're not checking for us. But if it's somewhere who, you know, we're peppered in there here and there, and they're open to IMGs or FMGs, I would definitely do that. But I know sometimes people, and it depends, again, it's all about strategy. Research, do they even accept IMGs? Because there are some residency programs that are just straight up like, no, we're not even going to look at your application, right? So don't waste your money there. But if there are, you know, programs that maybe are like in Idaho or Wyoming or Nebraska, or places that are not extremely popular, but they are receptive to IMGs, and you see us represented, male or female, you know, within recent years, then I would say extend yourself to that. That could be helpful. Ramla, Priscilla, anything more to add?
So I also think networking can be powerful. Yes. Okay, so there's two parts to this. Unfortunately, this really sucks that they have to use filters. I'm like one of those people who hates reducing someone down to a number. But especially with the recent cancellation of Step 2 CS, which used to be a huge hurdle for people to apply, because there's only like there was only like 4 centers in the entire country of entire US, and then it took people months to get a slot. And so that meant that it took people, you know, being able to actually apply, it took you longer to be eligible to apply for the match. And so with that gone, a lot more people can apply earlier than before. And so when I was in the application pool, I had talked with somebody that their programs were seeing applications numbers in the thousands. And if you think about it, program directors and their staff and their residents, at the same time that they're dealing with the application, are also seeing patients, are also running a program, are also doing all these things. And so there really isn't time to look at all the applications, and you know, thousands of applications. They have to put a bar. So I'm just going to throw that out there. I totally agree with what Corey just said, but also, you know, try and, you know, study as much as possible to get as high as you can for the exams. The other thing I'll say is that unless I'm mistaken, and Ramla, I think you would probably have the most experience with this because you've seen people come through the application process with your programs. But a program director can pull an application out of the pile, even if it was filtered out. And so this is where networking can be very powerful. So if you don't feel like you have those, maybe press some program directors, that is another way in the door. So I'll throw that out there. I don't know if anyone has any other comments on that.
Yeah, I think like that's a good point. I'll speak from my experience. I was very strategic where I applied. But I'll be honest, I did apply to university programs, even though I did see, you know, a sea of whiteness. But I said, you know what, I'm damn good. Let me just try it. But of course, you have to watch out for your finances as well. But, as an IMG, I had no luxury. And so I couldn't even, heck, I was really close to like Alaska as an option kind of situation. That's sort of where I was. But yes, I do agree that sometimes depending on your finances and your region, be very strategic. What I found out through the application process is that, also regions are very sensitive. Like, after training in the Midwest, I've realized that Midwesterners want to make sure Midwest people stay in the Midwest. They get very nervous and very suspicious. They're like, well, and I've been to those meetings. They're like, well, this person's from Boston. Are they really going to just stay here? And that might be like something where they will not engage. They're like, nope, this person is just going to train and then leave our region. So I think other regions are pretty okay about that, but I've learned like the Midwest and maybe even a bit of the South, they kind of get sensitive about people who come from the outside in. So just know that. And I think I'm not surprised if the IMGs usually apply in the New England area because that's a very dynamic, active area. But just know as you apply more inward, inland, the regions become sensitive. And so what I think helped me with because like I mentioned earlier, I think I got into residency. It took me a while. But when I finally did is because I improved my networking game. And so I made an effort to get to know residents, chief residents for sure, because I know chief residents are the ones who sit at faculty meetings, especially when it comes to time to look at applications. I made sure I got known during noon conferences. Sometimes people at that time, this was pre-COVID. And so I would go to like, when I was in Ohio, like in Cleveland, I did some research work close to Case Western and also Cleveland Clinic, and I met residents there. And so I was like, tell me when your new conference is, tell me when your didactics are. And it was, yes, a learning opportunity, but two, I wanted to network. So that's sort of the kind of thing I did. And I met a couple people who I knew from the University of Minnesota, same thing, even if I could attend virtually. And so I think that's sort of what helped me out get in, to be honest, because otherwise, I'll be honest, my marks are not like the greatest, but, I think it allowed at least for them to say, oh, there's this person, Ramla, she comes out, very engaging at these noon conferences, whatever, has research experience, maybe take a look at the application. And so when I finally going into residency, I realized that across the board, you'll find that, they do, yes, faculty, even the PD has that power to kind of take out an application. Now, at the same time, you have to realize that, especially these universities, like when I was at the University of Minnesota, they have a certain type of resident they want because they're trying to maintain the Midwestern person to stay in the Midwest. And actually just to stay in Minnesota, really. And they're really into rural health kind of thing. And so I knew coming in, I had to kind of play that, how can I convince them, why I'm an asset. And I'll be honest, I used the race card. I said, I'll offer so much diversity, and the research that I've done with refugee health, because Minnesota is considered a center of excellence for refugee health in the whole country, that I can bring all that content and research and my connections with CDC to do a lot of work with respect to quality improvement in primary healthcare. And so that angle really, I think, helped me. And I did produce a lot of work while as a resident there too. So they saw the output that I gave. And so I think you have to be, when you're applying to programs, really do a lot of homework. See what is unique about you that you can offer. Like Corey mentioned, you're right. My program, a sea of white people. I left it a sea of white people. I think I must be the last Black person there. But at least they know the impact that I brought to the program, right? I've done a lot of work with health equity, disparities. I got involved at the university level, like high level. I did research work. I'm in the process of publishing stuff. So I produced what I promised I would, and they knew that. And I'm hoping from there, I think, and I'm not saying badness about my program. I think right now they're really determined to actually now, recruit because people of color, I think they really tried last year during the match season to recruit Black people and, BIPOC people. But they just recruited all white crew, 5 women, 1 male, and a lot of people were concerned. So I think this is the year where you can try to capitalize that if you're applying to such programs. And, if you're willing to be the only person that is of color, that's okay. But, say, this is what I can bring to the program. And I think they'll be very open about it. Yeah.
And I also wanted to say, take advantage. So I believe this year's match cycle is going to be hybrid. Take advantage of those virtual opportunities. One of the concerns for me, like I said, I'm originally from Maryland. Morehouse is very big on you being interested in not only advocacy, community engagement, but wanting to remain, in Georgia, but ideally the Atlanta area. Like Atlanta has a lot of health disparities. There's a lot of work to do. So that was something that I knew going in, and that was something that I had to convince, the faculty and my program director that I was committed to. So you have to know that, and it pays, like Ramla said, to do your research. So I literally, before interview day, my program director had just released a study in the AFP journal. I pulled that up, I memorized that bad boy, and when it was time to interview with her, that was my introduction to the conversation. And she was like, damn, like, I'm not playing. This is where I want to be. So I'm going to do the work to figure it out and make sure that I'm here and that they remember me. There was still stuff that was not specifically residency related. Like I said, Morehouse does a lot in the community. They had like a cardiovascular health program. Corey Boggs was there. They had a fundraiser. Corey Boggs was there. Ain't even related to the residency program. But I'm showing y'all that I'm committed and I really want to be here. And when I say this is my #1 program, I'm not playing. I really mean that. The other thing that I wanted to say is, it was piggybacking off what Ramla said. I don't know. My biggest thing is take advantage of the virtual spaces, because you don't have to travel to go to these things, whatever, like the second looks that the programs have. So usually sometimes second looks are like didactic things. I know from Morehouse, the second look was more social, but it's still showing that you're showing up, you're paying attention, and you're committed to, getting to learn more about this program. So I would just encourage you to do that, because it's not always the easiest to do when you have to be there physically in person. So the fact that they have things that give you access to the program. There were other programs that I interviewed at where the program director would have an IG live. It might have been at 6 o'clock in the morning before sign out, but guess who was there? Corey Boggs. Because you're gonna know my name and you're gonna know that I'm interested in this program. So definitely take advantage of those things, because people do pay attention. And even if it's not the program director, like it may be residents who are like, dang, bro, like this girl keeps showing up, like let's check her out, or at least see, if she meets the standard that we're looking for. If I don't, but my name is being discussed. So I would definitely encourage that.
One thing I want to say that I think was really powerful about everything that Corey just shared is that in the application process, there are going to be a lot of applicants who are going to tell programs, oh, you're my #1. Oh, you're my #1. You're my #1 on my list. But it's one thing to say that someone's the #1. It's another thing to show them that you're my #1, which is exactly what she did, which I think was amazing.
Okay, the next question is, can you kind of give some useful information regarding navigating the whole visa process?
Ramla, I think that'd be you.
Yeah, I had a feeling. Yeah, that's a beast. I will not lie. Very much of a beast. But I think what helped out was, like I mentioned earlier, my husband, we came in through like he came in through a J1 waiver. And so as a dependent, I was like a J, and so that kind of, I think, helped out a lot. And it allowed me to also to apply for like an employment authorization card. And so, which was good and helpful. And, but I'll be honest, just going through that process was also like very hard. So I was lucky because I had my partner who just, even had a lawyer assigned to his program to help me as a dependent. So that kind of alleviated a lot of stress, so that by the time I entered the program, at that time my husband was done residency, and so he was just also on that waiver, and I had like another visa, so that kind of helped out, and the school was okay. The university was okay with me being part of the program because they accepted it, which was great. But midway through my residency, I was fortunate, and this was pre-COVID, and thank God it happened pre-COVID, I got my green card. So that has helped also in the process. But that whole thing, that's just like at least a lot of years in the making. And I think you really have to be mindful of programs. Really do your research about the visa thing. I mean, if they say no visa, don't apply. Like, it's just a money gone. Just know they don't have the resources, they don't have the lawyer and whatnot. But it is doable. There are programs which are okay with visas, and I say just apply to those ones, focus on those ones for sure. And so you just got to make sure you let your stars align as much as possible, because you also have to think about your finances. I hope that helps. I hope that answers the question.
Just want to add one thing. I have a colleague, a friend I know who applied, who needed a visa. She applied for match. She matched, but I feel like she didn't, she wasn't super vigilant about getting paperwork done early in advance so that she could get those visas in. And so because of this, the program actually had to end up dropping her after she never got to start. She ended up having to be dropped from the program, and now she's going to have to apply for a match again. So all that just to say, open communication with the programs, everything that Ron was saying, open communication with the programs, doing your homework, understanding those deadlines, and do not, oh, it's a month away, or oh, it's 2 months away. You get that thing in right away. You find out whoever you can to help you process whatever it needs to be processed, because even if you match to a program that says that they help with visas, if you don't do what you're supposed to do on your end, you can lose your spot.
Okay, next question is, how important is research? And the other question to that is just, should we put a lot of focus on obtaining research, and does it have to be published?
I personally think that anything extra is always a plus. I mean, I also want you to make sure that it's something that you're actually interested, invested in, and passionate about. Because if you list it on your CV and your ERAS application, there's the potential that they could ask you about it. I did some bench research at Wake Forest in 2014. Like, I didn't wholly remember everything that I did and what the results were and the process. But because it was on my ERAS, best believe I went back to that paper that I wrote up, and I knew the details just in case they asked me. So I think that if you're going to list it, or if you're going to do it, it should be something that is done to the fulfillment and the caliber that you would feel comfortable putting it on your ERAS application, and can speak on it, thoroughly, if you were to be asked about it in your interview. Because I want to go back to what Priscilla said about family medicine, being like the backup for people, and programs understanding that it's, they can kind of see through that. Despite what the overall perception is of family medicine, it is very difficult, and especially residency, because people have this perception that, oh, family medicine physicians, they just do outpatient. They come and see, you come and see them for your physical once a year, and that's it, that's all. It's not. When intern year for me, starting in September, I will be inpatient from now until December straight. Like, it's not, we are very well versed, and we're very well trained in a multitude of things. Priscilla can tell you, she's already been on L&D. She's already been on inpatient. So we are very versatile, and we do have a deep knowledge. Ramla is a whole attending. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. And so if you just apply to family medicine with this mentality that, like, oh, it's just, a safety net for me. Like, bro, there's nothing safe about family medicine. It is a beast. I'm trying to tell you. So I think that anything you do should be to support that, should be to amplify that and that passion that you have for the specialty, because otherwise it's going to show through, and it's going to show through because you've never really taken the time to really research, what the purpose of family medicine is or what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to echo everything you said. I think, like I mentioned earlier, I just did research because I'm very interested in research. I love doing scholarly work because I'm very committed to just, yes, I love community engagement, but I also want evidence and data to show the benefits of community engagement through quality improvement projects. So that's sort of what gravitated me towards it. And because I have that public health background, family medicine, public health, I just feel are like sisters. And so it kind of marries my love of research, but as well as clinical stuff. And so I've always brought that to the forefront and the table. And I'll be honest, in my class, actually of the 3 classes we have in my previous program, I was the only one with an MPH. I was the only one who done research. I was the only one who published work. And I'll be honest, I kind of used that to my advantage when I was interviewing. I'm like, look, I'll bring scholarly work. And current residents will tell you part of the requirement also to graduating is to do some sort of scholarly work. So if you already know how to do that, that is so great, because then other residents start relying on you to help them out as well, to like, how do I get this work done? And so whether or not it's a requirement for, for your application, I'll be honest with you, I think it'll be nice. It'll give you that edge. And unfortunately, it's not fair, because when I look at some American medical grads, not all of them, do that research, but they get into residency, which is so not fair because you're such a world-class, applicant. But I think to give you that upper edge, if you've done research, that is great. American medical graduates have that luxury of, if they don't get it, that's okay, because they still have another way to get matched. So I think, through my experience and what I've been seeing in the last 3 years, IMGs have had to have that research. And another thing, of course, step 3. For me, I didn't mention this previously, but I did have my step 3 before I started residency. So that was just something I wanted out of the way. And so I think that's what also helped me as well. And it was a kind of nice feeling because I was the only one cruising through intern year, was the other of my co-interns were stressing about step 3. So think about that if you have time, or if you have even the resources for research, because I know it can be hard as well.
Okay, the next question is, how many programs did Drew apply to? And yeah, I'll just leave that question. That's it.
I'm going to start off by saying I would not have done my application process the way I did it. I was enrolled at Ross. This was the guidance they gave me. I've never been in match before, so I just went based off what they said. Ross, now one thing I will say positive about Ross is they stay on your ass. I'm sorry, I'm just getting real right now. They stay on your ass. So they will literally track you down. They'll be like, you have this GPA, you have this step 1 and step 2 score. Based on that and our historical match rate, this is how many programs you should apply to. I will also say that, of course, last year was unprecedented. No one has ever matched virtual, with virtual 100% virtual interviews. So it was a little bit different. I personally, and Priscilla probably feels me on this, do not think that the number that they told us to which was in excess of like 80, 90, 100 programs, is necessary. I don't think so. But I will also say you have to know yourself, the programs that you're applying to, that you intend to apply to, and what they're looking for in an applicant. So it's multifactorial. Our school tends to just go off of historically how people have done and what you presented with. They're not taking necessarily into context the people the region you're from, the connection you may have made through your 3rd and 4th year rotations. I will also say that I believe it's AAMC has like a stat that says pretty much once you apply to over 17 schools, the return on interviews is pretty much, it does not increase. So I'll also say that. Now, I'm never going to tell you a solid number, but I think that you should take into consideration what your scores are, who you know, where you're trying to apply to, and historically what, who they have accepted. So like Ramla was saying, knowing like the chief residents, the residents in the program, establishing a relationship with them and maybe getting a feel for what it looked like their year. But I also think there's a balance, right, in being considerate of other people, because there was the issue last year with virtual interviews of people just hogging stuff. Like if you get the interview first and this is your 30th interview and this is someone else's first interview, like that's not cool. So I'll be transparent. I want to say I applied to like 99. That's just because Ross made me. I would not advise you to do that because it's very expensive. Like it goes up in increments of, I think it's like 1 to 20 is a certain price, and then 21 to 40 is a certain price, and then 40 and beyond is a certain price. I would not advise that. I probably got upwards of 30 interviews. I only accepted like 15 because I did not want to be that asshole. Sorry, y'all, I'm being really real. To hoard stuff, I just didn't feel like it was necessary. I felt like I had gotten interviews for sure, places that I knew I wanted to be and I was okay with being at. And I had also got interviews at places that had, solid curriculums. And if I landed there, that was okay for me. So I was not in the panic of like, oh my God, I got 40 interviews, so let me take all of them. Also, it's exhausting as hell. Like people feel like, oh, well, it's virtual. You're just in front of the computer. So it's not that tiring because you're not flying all over the country. Wrong. Morehouse's interview was all day long. I was tired. So I stuck to all the programs that if I felt like, whether it was 1, whether it was 17, if I matched there, I would be okay with going there. That was just me personally. That is not everybody's story. That's just me.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Corey said. I did, it was over 100. I don't remember exactly how much over 100. In retrospect, I feel like I would have been fine with less. I think from a Ross perspective, I mean, they don't like, there was a lot of things that Corey mentioned. They don't have time to know anything besides the numbers. And their job is to get you an interview or to get you to match somewhere. And so they don't have time to look into everyone's individual story and see how does your individual story factor into your ability to get some kind of position at a residency. And so, and I honestly, because they keep telling people to do the same thing every year, they may not know what it looks like for people to apply to less places, because historically that's the same story they've been telling everyone for who knows how many years. So they might not know what that looked like. So I think everything that Corey just said about things that you should do, about how, are you networking? Are you doing all those other things that help boost your application? Because you'll kind of get a sense for whether or not you are in a place. And what I mean, whether or not you have, what kind of numbers you need in order to be successful with the application process. I know some people who got 1 interview and that was all they needed because they matched at that place and it was their top choice. So, I mean, it's just like when you're applying for med school, it's a multifactorial thing and you have to look at all the factors. I feel like Ross looks at the numbers, looked at what people's grades are, looked at what their scores were, and factors like that in order to come up with stuff. So yeah, I agree with everything she just said.
Yeah, for me, I think I'll be honest, yeah, I did apply to several. But yeah, I think I applied to like about 50 though. It was not so many. I just didn't have money. So I couldn't go really up there. But the reason why I did, just because I was a couple years out of med school. And so, and because I took a little detour of the MPH. And so at that time, I was not really sure, you know, if I should even go less, you know. Interview wise, I mean, I got interviews, which I'm happy about. Not as many compared to others, but that was still okay. And I knew I had to use those opportunities. It was like less than 10, I'll be honest with you, less than 10 interviews. And so I knew I just had to like give it like 200%. And I anticipated that, I'll be honest with you, just because I was considered, you know, a little out of med school, but at least I had these world experiences, which I really try to bring at the forefront in my research. So I think that's what kind of helped out. So once again, you have to do, you know, this process is a lot of self-reflection. And you got to look at your pros and your cons, your strengths and the weaknesses. You got to be really honest about yourself. You know, if you know you're like 5+ years out of med school, you really need to like make your application very strategic, because it is harder. And I was at least 5+ years out of med school, I'll be honest, because I did some work, I did MPH, and you know, I took the scenic route, I called it. And programs get nervous about that, which is interesting because like 20 years ago, you know, we were the people they were looking for, but now, you know, the tables have changed. Now they want people who just kind of roll out of med school. There's a lot of information about that, and some people have concerns about that. And so in any event, so I knew I had to play my cards a little differently than Corey and Priscilla. And so have that self-reflection and do a lot of research on those programs. I mean, if they say, oh, we want recent grad, somebody who graduated within 3 years, I was also very mindful. I was like, nope, I'm not applying to that. Just because I have no money. And first of all, I just don't want them to, you know, get a reject email. And so don't apply to programs if they've already said we only want people within 2 or 3 years. So you need to open yourself up and really apply for those programs that have no cap, and who are open to the research work that you've done and life experiences you have. And they are out there. I'll be honest with you, like I was surprised I even matched at a university program. You know, it was up there on my rank list, but I was just like, you know what, let me just do it anyways. But it happened. So it does happen. IMGs can go into university-based programs. So I was lucky because looking back, I was very strategic with how I applied and where I applied. And I was honest with myself and my scores and my experience and my age. You know, that's it. Yeah. That's all I have to offer.
And I think I'm just for completion's sake, Gertrude, you were asking about with step 1 transitioning. So the big thing is step 1 is transitioning to pass fail January 2022. So there was someone in the chat who was asking about you know, the pressure to get step 2 in. I mean, especially because this was my situation, I'm just gonna keep it all the way funky. My step 1 score was, I believe, a 215. So I already went into step 2 knowing like, bro, I gotta come with it because this is like my redemption. The expectation is already that you, I think, increase like 20 points to show that, you know, you're a decent standardized test taker, which I am not. Much like Priscilla said, I hate it. But it's just what comes with the territory. And I think with step 2, I came up to like a 245, 250 or something like that. I don't know. But the shift will be completely step 2 CK specifically after the pass fail in January. So somebody was asking about what if they don't have their score in by like September. I think as long as you have it in, you know, within this fall, you should be fine. But the pressure will really be on those who have taken step 1 after January of 2022, because that's when it becomes pass fail. And traditionally, you know, step 1 has been our equalizer. Like for IMGs, those of us who perform, you know, it's an equalizer. We all have to take the same board exam. And if you can perform decent on that, then it shows like, oh, okay, you know, you're pretty solid, even though y'all are solid regardless. But I'm just saying this is the system. And, you know, we see the potential in you. So I think as long as it's done before 2021, you should be fine. And then there was another question.
Can I add to that real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
This is something I've heard from somebody else, that if you, especially if your step one is on the lower side, but you know your step two won't come in on time by September 29th, then you can go ahead and email some of your the programs like a week before ERAS. That's some advice I got, and so that they kind of get it in before all the rush, and that might help increase your chances.
And someone is also asking, how far back did I document on my ERAS? Anything that was relevant, I did. So I've been hustling since I came into this. I always knew I wanted to go to medical school. And so anything that I participated in, it was aimed towards that. So in college, I think I was mentioning before, Ramla was saying how she was involved in like a lot of global health stuff, a lot of public health stuff. Once I got my certification, my certification in phlebotomy, I was volunteering. There are a lot of free clinics. They need people. They need people who genuinely care about the people who are receiving the care. That is where I got a lot of my experience. So I don't feel like someone saying they graduated in 2010, that is okay. Now, the only thing I will say, like Ramla mentioned, some programs have a stipulation like, you know, you would have had to graduate within 3 years or 5 years. So that's something to pay attention to. Researching, are they sponsoring visas? Because I know where I did my internal medicine, both third year and my sub internship, because we're required to do another internal medicine rotation during fourth year. They sponsored that. So that internal medicine program was predominantly FMGs. Like these are people who already got their MDs. They have been practicing for years and they came to the States. So you just kind of have to know the culture of the program. But as far as research and volunteer work, I don't think there's ever, you know, a expiration date on that, but you also have to do your research to know, you know, what is the cutoff for certain programs, because certain programs do say, oh, if you're 3 years out, you're 5 years out. That's not what we're looking for.
I think I just wanted to add though, that I still, you know, maybe just because thinking about my route and my reflection, right? And I'm here, my husband is beside me, he's listening, but you know, ideally, you know, I can't further emphasize, because we have to realize there's two classifications of IMGs. There's the Americans, you know, these are full-fledged US citizens compared to us who are like foreign, you know, we have no visa. And at the end of the day, and this is just through my experience, even when I was at the University of Minnesota, they'll be like, if even if we're contemplating an IMG, this IMG needs to have all their exams done. Like that's the reality. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Get your step 3 in, get it done. Do not wait. You know, Americans are lucky because they do have that luxury. I'll just be honest with you. That's just something I've seen. Unless you're really chummy with the program you're planning to apply and they know you and they can give you that luxury of, oh, it's okay, you know, just make sure you get it done by January, fine. But I don't know how many times I've been into meetings where they'll be like, yeah, this is a great IMG applicant, but X, Y, and Z does not have their step 3. And even though Joe Smith, who's an American from Minnesota, you know, is still waiting on CK, he's the dude who gets the interview. That's just a reality. I won't lie. Yeah, it's hard, it's tough. But you just need to get that exam done. I don't know how much I could stress it. So for me, I tried to get all my things done by August. Yeah, but that's the only input. That's through my reflection and my husband's experience and other people. We have friends, we went to same med school who are Ugandan, who are here. And that's sort of the motto we had. Get your exams done the August before you apply. Yeah.
And that's also something to consider regardless, because every program has a deadline as to when you have step 3 finished. For my particular program, in order to get your contract renewed, you got to have that step 3 in and passed. So sometimes it's easier. Oh, and someone just asked, how important is step 3? I think as an IMG, as a non-US IMG, you know, it speaks volumes, because the number one thing programs want to know is can this applicant as a representative of my program pass step 3 on the first time? That's something that they're measured on. So if they know you can do that, you know, and you've already done it, then that's a plus on your side. But also, depending on what type of program you go into, traditionally, regardless of what your program is heavy on. Like some programs are OB heavy, some programs are inpatient heavy, some programs are more traditional where they're inpatient heavy the first year and then you move more towards outpatient, which tends to kind of be more house. It's sometimes better just to get it out of the way because it's difficult. It's difficult to study in, through the virtue of caring for patients, in essence, you are studying for step 3, but to actually sit down, UWorld, crank through your blocks, do your UWorld self-assessments, to do that, consistently when you have a heavy inpatient schedule, intern year is difficult. And a lot of the programs that I was looking at require that you pass step 3 within the first 12 to 18 months. And that's contingent on renewal of your contract, AKA your job. So it's, that's something that you have to also consider as well.
Okay, the next question that we have is that if you were to pick one question that you think was important for figuring out whether a program was the right program for you, what question would that be?
For me, because there was 3 things I was looking for out of a program. And so it was always about whether or not I would be able to work on those 2 things. 1 was global health, 2 was OB, and 3 was health equity in general, which kind of health equity and global health, to me, I don't necessarily see that much of it's a thin line. I think from my point of view, global health is just health equity globally. But would I be able to, at the same time I'm advancing my family medicine career, am I going to be able to advance in those areas? OB, I'm gonna tell you right now, there's always this thing with family medicine and OB, and family medicine residents trying to get OB experiences. And it's gonna vary from program to program, whether or not you're going to be able to get the type of experiences that you want. And so that was like, that OB question probably was the most important one, because I've already made very strong global health connections. I honestly don't need my program for that. I'm just gonna keep it real. Because when I was a student, I was a member of the Consortium of Universities for Global Health, and I was the chair of their global student health organization. And so I made a lot of connections with people around the world through that program. So I don't need my program for that. But that OB, oh my gosh, there are some programs where during residency, you'll find that you're essentially, if that hospital has an OB residency program, you're fighting for the ability to get experiences, because the OB people have to make numbers. And technically speaking, family medicine does not have any OB numbers requirements to meet. So if you want OB to be a part of your practice, in some places, you're going to have to really fight for it. Luckily, I'm at a place that has the OB residency program. And when I do an OB rotation, it's just me and the OB attending, and that's it. Just me, the intern, and the OB attending. And I'm doing vaginal deliveries. I'm primary assisting on C-sections. And once I get my suturing technique down, they'll let me actually do the C-sections. So that, for me, it was all about the OB, I think, was the biggest thing.
I agree with Priscilla saying, identify as you go into interview season, identify what's a priority for you. For me, if you can't tell by now, I'm very big on health equity, health advocacy, anti-racism, and that's been since the beginning. So, 2020 was a unique year because, a lot of racial injustice have been amplified, even though this has been our existence since, the beginning of time. And so I just wanted to make sure that I was at a program that was not performative in their support of these things, but actually directly active in that and supportive of me and being active in that. Because I think one of the great things about family medicine is that because we are so connected to the community, a lot of health policy and equity is tied into the work that we do directly with our patients and ensuring that they have great health outcomes. But the degree to which programs may be committed to that can vary. And so I wanted to make sure that I was at a program that did that. And I mean, literally just for those who are, well, I'm not going to plug Morehouse, but Morehouse is a program that, its inception literally came out of, fighting like racial injustice, like literally. It's a whole story. So that was something that was important to me. And then the ability to, because one of the things I thought I knew what the possibilities were with family medicine, but I mean, it's literally endless. And one of the things that I also love about family medicine, or in specifically my program, is that you can hone in on whatever you want to do. So we have people who have graduated, who have gone into academic medicine, who have gone into traditional outpatient, who have been hospitalists. I mean, anything you can think of. Some people who are not even in the clinical realm, they're doing more policy or more administrative work. Whatever you want it to be, whatever you want your career to be, they will, help you accomplish that. And so that was important to me. Oh, and the last thing is the business of medicine, because I hate it. I don't feel like there should be a business aspect to medicine, but the reality is that, we're in the United States, capitalism is a thing. And with that, you're providing a service that you get paid for. And I think that's something that should be highlighted in both medical school and residency, but it's not always. And I appreciated that they brought it up. Morehouse brought it up, like, look, y'all are going to go out into the world after 3 years and y'all need to know what the real is. And so we're going to provide you with a curriculum that helps support that. So definitely echoing what Priscilla said, as far as having your priorities for what you want to get out of your residency training and going to a place that will provide you with that.
Yeah, totally echo what Priscilla and Corey have said. For me, like I've hinted earlier, very much into refugee health disparities, of course, global health. And that's what I kind of push at the forefront. I made sure that programs knew who I was. I was very authentic. I came in, I said, I'm a Black Muslim female. I came in with a headscarf during my interviews. I did not try to hide anything, and I told them, this is me, this is what I'm going to bring to the table. And so I knew when I matched into a program, they were ready to take my authentic self, because I'm an advocate and I will speak up and I will call you out, and they're okay with that. I know we're living in troubled times, but I think don't underestimate the power of your voice and what you can bring to the table, because programs are looking for that, and I'll be honest, my program, it's very different from how I entered to how I left it. And I'm glad, because I was interested in various things, and I knew applying to that program, some of the stuff they kind of offered, for instance, OB, which I love because it's like an unopposed program. Refugee health, somewhat, they did treat a refugee community, but research they didn't have. But why I still put them at top of my list is because they had faculty within the department who actually do that work. And so, like we said earlier, when you do the research, and I would say, you know what, I know you have this faculty who's at this center. Can you connect me with this person who can mentor me to do this type of work? And so those are things to think about, because not all programs may have everything you want, but if they have somebody who's there who can mentor you throughout the process, that's an ideal thing. So that's sort of what I looked at, was that even if I may not get what I want, do they have the resources or the personnel to get me where I need to be? And also going into interviews, I think an important thing you have to realize is that, how do you see yourself in 5 and 10 years from now? And that's something I usually discuss during interviews, that this is what I feel I can offer family medicine. This is what I see myself doing in 5 years. I want a program who can help me get there. And so very important to think about that question and how this program can take you there. So yeah, that's my input. Thanks.
Thank you. So we're gonna wrap up in about 5 minutes. Just gonna stop the recording.